Hey, I'm Randy and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we help folks find high-value hi-fi, home theater, and headphone equipment. And today we're talking about my favorite amps that I've listened to this year. So, sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about my favorite amps. Today's sponsor is Sith Audio, Giant Triangles of Happiness. If you remember my Klipsch RP6000F review, you may remember that Sith Audio had their Triangles of Happiness, their room treatments that you can place anywhere in the room, guaranteed to knock out any room resonances, reflections, bass nodes, modes, whatever they are, doesn't matter. Sith Audio's Giant Triangle room treatment can also double as a holiday decoration. Amplifiers. Everybody needs an amplifier if they have a passive speaker. There can be a little bit of confusion because amplifiers come in different sizes, shapes, colors, and capabilities. Today we're going to talk about amps. Some of them are integrated, some of them are just power amps. Number one, we're going to go from most affordable to more expensive amplifiers. You probably already know it if you watch my channel at all. The IEMA A07. I've got the hood up on this one because guess what I'm going to do? Change out the op amps. Op amps are right there. One can change out the op amps for $5 or $150. It just depends on what type of op amp you want. Regardless, this thing out of the box already sounds very good. And for a Class D amplifier, I found that it has a significant amount of body. Maybe lacks a little bit of detail on top compared to other amplifiers, but I love it. And it's $80. Now there's no remote control. There's no Bluetooth. It's volume and an RCA input and speaker outputs. That's it. So if one is interested in this, they're going to need a source. But for $80, it is probably the best amplifier personally that I've heard. It's small. You can upgrade the power supply to get even more power out of it. You can find all the details if you click on this link in the description. IEMA A07. Moving up the line in price, we have the wonderful, awesome, beautiful SMSL DA9. It is a balanced amplifier. It has the Infineon 12070 amp chip inside, has some EQ settings that are baked right in, also has tone controls, also has Bluetooth and a subwoofer out. So the only source one is getting with the SMSL DA9 is Bluetooth. If you want to listen to your digital music, you're going to need a DAC or digital to analog converter. However, this thing sounds awesome, puts out plenty of power, and has options for balanced inputs. SMSL uses the Infineon 12070 amp chip in a lot of their products, including the A0200, including the SA300. How it was implemented in here and the A0200. So if you can't find the DA9, the A0200 sounds exactly the same. It just has a USB port so you can connect a thumb drive or something with your music. $250. Moving up the chain a little bit more. We have the Emotiva. I just did this review. It is the A2 Mini, BASX A2 Mini, $300. Puts out 50 watts into 8 ohms, 90 watts into 4 ohms. This is not a Class D. This is a Class AB. It has an internal switching power supply, so no toroidal transformer in here. But don't worry, because it sounds real nice. Not much to it. On the back there's RCA inputs, speaker outputs, switch for variable or for fixed output. So this can become just a power amplifier if you want it to. Also has a headphone jack, so one can pop the hood on this, jumper the step down resistors, and have full power into the headphone jack. Yeah. This is awesome. Now, this is not an integrated amplifier. It is an integrated amplifier from the fact that it has integrated volume control, but there's no input switching. There's no DAC. I got a lot of comments on this video about they wished it had a remote control or Bluetooth or a DAC inside. That is not an integrated amplifier in the traditional sense. This is a power amplifier that has volume control. Just like the IEMA A07. Same concept, but that's $300. puts out a massive amount of power and has a headphone amp that can put out a massive amount of power and can be the foundation of a 2-channel system. Soundbar replacement. I love that thing. So the Emotiva is $300. I didn't bring out all the amplifiers into my living room because, well, some of them are heavy. Next one is the Cambridge Audio AXA 25 or 35. The 25 has 25 watts. The 35 has 35 watts. And they cost $250 and $350 respectively. Both those amplifiers have multiple inputs. So those amplifiers start to manage input selection. So if you have a CD player, a turntable, whatever it is, you start to switch the inputs on the amplifier itself. Some of these, like the DA9, does have 2 inputs, but one is balanced and one is RCA. So one can have 2 inputs on it, but one has to be RCA, one has to be balanced. The Cambridge Audio AXA 25 and 35 both have a more full sound. All of these amplifiers that I've talked about, the IEMA, the DA9, the Emotiva A2 Mini, all of them have a fuller sound. The DA9, however, can have a lot more detail on top, depending upon what EQ setting you choose, or if you use tone controls or not. AXA 25 and 35 both have tone controls as well. Next up, the SVS Soundbase. SVS Soundbase. So this one is what most people would consider an integrated amplifier because it integrates a DAC and a streamer, although that streamer is Play-Fi. Play-Fi is not the best streaming platform out there, but it's okay. It works. SVS has 2 analog inputs, one RCA, one 3.5 millimeter, a subwoofer output, also RCA outputs. So this can also become a preamp if one wants it to be. This thing is very powerful. If one nudges the volume, it jumps up quite a bit. Another great sounding Class D amplifier that is not too harsh. I don't know what's going on in here. I may pop the hood to see what type of amplifier chips, what it's using on the inside, but this thing is awesome. No tone controls, no remote control. It's very, very, very good. So it has a streamer and optical in, then one RCA and one 3.5. So one can get 2 analog inputs into this, an optical input. It has internal streaming and internal Bluetooth. Very good, sounds very, very good. Another small amplifier that I just love is the Vista Audio Spark. Vista Audio Spark is 20 watts per channel, but most people can get away with 20 watts per channel because it's 20 clean watts. If somebody has a more efficient speaker, probably anything 87 dB or above, I don't think they're gonna have a problem with the Vista Audio Spark. That sound signature is very clean, but there is still a lot of body on the bottom. Absolutely crystal clear on the top. That amplifier is actually a chip amp. Chip amps are not Class D amplifiers. Class D amplifiers do use chips as far as amplifier chips, op-amp chips, and things like that. But the Vista Audio Spark uses a traditional toroidal transformer on the inside and a chip to control things like biasing and other things. It's $389. No remote control, no Bluetooth, no nothing. It's an analog chip amplifier. Has 2 analog inputs, RCAs, with a switch on the front. Vista Audio Spark, it's $389 and it's fantastic. Although most of the stuff I'm talking about today is a 2-channel amplifier, I would be remiss if I did not include the Marantz NR 1711, which is a 7-channel AVR or surround receiver. There is so much stuff packed into that receiver, including a direct mode for 2-channel listening, including a pure direct mode for 2-channel listening. Makes it even better. Basically, it starts to shut down different parts of the receiver to mitigate noise and things like that. I actually compared the NR 1711 by Marantz to the Moon by SimAudio 240i, which is a very expensive 2-channel amplifier. And while the Moon by SimAudio was a bit better, it wasn't that much better. And when one considers what they're getting with the Marantz, integrated streamer, it's Hios, again, it's not that great, but it works. Bluetooth, full DSP processing as far as EQ settings, things like that, time delays, room correction, room setup. One can even run a dedicated 5-channel surround system and a dedicated 2-channel stereo system Also has 2 subwoofer outs, also has preamp outs for the front 2 channels. I think some of us miss out on a lot of value by not considering AVR receivers, even for just music. That is one of my favorite pieces of equipment and is a extreme value because it has a DAC too. It doesn't have a USB DAC, but it does have coaxial and optical inputs. 50 watts a channel into 8, I think 70 into 4, although the 4 ohm rating isn't really published. I'll say this though, that any speaker that I've hooked up to it, including harder to drive speakers like the KEF LS50, weren't an issue with the Marantz NR 1711. I think the price jumps around on that thing. I think it's $850. Expensive, I know, but you get a surround receiver, you get 2-channel receiver, you get all sorts of cool DSP, you get a DAC, you have preamp outs, also has a phono stage, full remote control, everything you could think of. Very good piece of equipment, even for music. Another all-in-one solution that I really like. Now, to be fair, I kind of like separates. So I like a separate DAC, I like a separate amplifier, maybe a separate preamp, a separate phono amp. That's just me though. I love this, obviously. So I like to pick and choose. I like to find my little unicorn, then I like to combine it, then I like to hear the differences, hear how they interact. But for most of you out there, you don't want to do that. And one of the best integrated amps that I've come across as far as value and sound is the Emotiva TA100. I talk about Emotiva products a lot because they're good and they're extremely high value. The TA100 comes with a sub out, it comes with a preamp out, it comes with a preamp out that has a high pass filter, which you use a high pass filter to block the bass from your smaller bookshelf speakers or even tower speakers, and then send the bass to the subwoofer. So everything ends up sounding better. Has a phono preamp, also has a DAC, also has Bluetooth, and it has some analog inputs for the rest of your components. Sounds good. Typical Emotiva sound, full but not warm, detailed, a bit of a U shape. Emphasis on the bass, emphasis on the treble. Doesn't have as much detail as the Vista Audio Spark or even the SMSL DA9, but overall at I think $550, it's a huge value proposition. It's a brilliant component for what one is getting. Also has a remote control. One and done. So you buy the TA100, you got everything you need. And later down the line, if you want to add a dedicated power amp, like the BASX A2, like the BASX A2 Mini, you can. Or the XPA Gen 3, which is their much larger amplifier. The Skit Vidar, just a power amp, no volume control. One will need a preamp of sorts. That preamp could be simply a DAC or traditional preamp like the Saga, like the Freya. So there's a lot of options to use as a preamp into the Vidar. The Vidar's sound signature is very clean, controls the bass very well, leans a bit cool when compared to the Emotiva products. And some people really enjoy that sound. I think the Vidar's $700. You could add the Saga for $300. So you got $1,000. Add the Loki or the Lokius for tone controls. You have a wonderful system, but don't be scared away that you have to spend a whole bunch of money on a preamp or tone controls. You just get a DAC, or you can get something even like the IEMA T8, which has tone controls, a DAC, Bluetooth, all that good stuff. As a power amp though, I think the Vidar is tough to beat. But if it can be beaten, it's beaten by the Akitika or Akitika power amplifier. It's like the PT102 or something. There's an 8 ohm and a 4 ohm version of it. It is a kit, so you can build it yourself, or you can pay to have it built by Akitika. Even when you pay to have it built, it comes in under $700, and it is fantastic. Dan, the owner, proprietor, whatever you want to call it, of Akitika, has been repairing and building amplifiers for decades. And I think this design has been refined over the decades. There is some design considerations that he's using inside the power amp PT1. I don't remember what it is. I'll link it though. They really only have a couple of products, a preamp and a power amp. 2 versions of the power amp though, an 8 ohm and a 4 ohm version. Anyway, the design characteristics of it are very impressive. There is some grounding things that they do special. It is also a chip amp similar to the Vista Audio Spark. And I know testimonials don't hold a huge amount of weight, but basically that's all you're getting from me is a testimonial and my experience. But every Sunday night I get together with my patrons and we have a chit chat. And one of my patrons, Neil, just built the power amp, and he has been listening for 40 years or so and been buying some very high-end products as well. His comment about the Akitika amp was it's the best he's ever heard. And I have a tendency to agree. It's not as warm as the Emotivas, but it is what I would say completely, perfectly linear. But the best thing about that amp is the ability to soundstage an image. It truly gives one a holographic experience, and I know some people laugh at that term, holographic experience. What does that mean? It means it puts instruments and people and performers in space around you, to the sides, far behind the speakers, very akin to a tube amplifier. And that makes sense because Dan has also done a lot of work on Dynaco equipment. I don't think you can go wrong. If you have the skills and the inclination, building it is a ton of fun. If you don't worry about it. Just order it assembled and they'll do it for you for less than $200, which is incredible because it took me hours, a couple of days to put together the preamp. So the Akitika GT102, I think. Staggeringly awesome. Also can be bridged. The power rating is 50 watts into 8 ohms. And then there's another version that's 50 watts into 4 ohms. I think that's gonna be good enough for most people because even though it's not super high power, the current is there to drive even really hard to drive speakers with low impedances. But if you need even more power, you can just buy 2 of them, bridge them, you're done. I think you get 100 watts. And even buying 2 of those amplifiers assembled, around $1,200. I know that's a lot, but they sound pretty awesome. It is just a power amplifier though, so you need a preamp. Akitika also makes a preamp. I built that kit. I think it's fantastic as well. And I think obviously there's some synergy between the Akitika preamp and the Akitika power amp. And that has really become my reference for everything. So those are my favorite amps. So prices ranging from $80 all the way up to $700, $1,000 if you, or $1,100 if you count the Emotiva GPA, XPA, Gen 3. I always say GPA. If you have any questions about some other amplifiers that I've reviewed, sometimes even when I do these videos, I forget some of my favorite products. So if you think there's something I forgot, drop it in the comments. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have patron-only Zooms. We also have a patron-only Facebook group. You can also click on the link to most of these products. Most of those products are affiliate links. Some are not. Vista Audio isn't. Akitika isn't. Skit isn't. You can also sign up for Amazon Music. There's a link in the description. Sign up. You get a few months for free, or you can get Disney Plus for free. You can even cancel. Doesn't matter. I'll get a couple of dollars. There's also links to Best Buy, to Crutchfield. Easy way to support the channel. Doesn't cost you any more, but I get a commission on most of the things you buy. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen through one of your new amplifiers and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.